Hey guys, welcome into another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We are live just shortly after Brandon Staley had his introductory press conference, and super excited to, have this next era of Chargers football go forward under Brandon Staley's watch. Joining me as always are Tyler and Alex. Alex, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Heartbreaking news for you guys. I will not have to take a shit at the link. That was, something that people thought that I thought I might have to do, but I will not have to do it.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the Eagles did not hire Josh McDaniels. I think when I saw that notice, I'm pretty sure I could hear the sigh of relief coming from Alex's mouth all the way from here. Tyler, how are you doing today, dude?
After that introductory press conference, I'm ready to go take this podcast head on. I'll beat it with a crowbar, take its kneecaps out, rip its spine out, bite its ear off. I'm ready. I think I'm good to go.
I think I'm good to go too, man. A lot of people were raving about Dan Campbell's press conference, man. That was honestly like, go get your mental health checked out. Like, go get checked for CTE, because that was honestly like a little haunting. Brandon Staley's press conference to me was much more inspiring and much more motivating than that one is. But
yes,
maybe that's just me. So we are going to talk about, all the major takeaways from Brandon Staley's press conference as well. We're going to get to the retirement of Phillip Rivers at the end. So really, it's just been a crazy couple of days for Chargers fans, and we're going to get to all of it right now. So before we get to everything football related, I think for me, Brandon Staley is just a very special human being, and what him and his family have gone through with cancer. And he's a cancer survivor. His mom died of cancer. His dad's beaten cancer twice. And just like all the little things, like, repeating the reporters' names and giving a special shout out to Shelly Smith and the way that he talked about his family and how he said that he was he comes from the coaching tree of his parents first and foremost. And I think, beyond the X's and O's, and he's got a brilliant football mind from all accounts. But, the major takeaway for me is just that, the Chargers have been really lucky in the human department for their head coaches, the last two guys. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Brandon Staley brings to this team, obviously as a coach, but more so as a human being.
Yeah, for me, it's just very easy to see why the Chargers were blown away by Brandon Staley, And like you pointed out, I think there's no moment that highlights that, what's so impressive about him more than him, when he was asked about his cancer. And he turns to Shelly on cue, turns to Shelly Smith, an ESPN reporter, a cancer survivor, says hi, Shelly Smith, and blows her a kiss. And, he just remembers people. You can tell through the whole conference. He's cycling through everyone he's ever met. He cares about these people. He has a big heart. The question about his, his cancer and what he's learned, it could have been all about him, but he took the time to, call out someone by name and acknowledge someone who didn't even talk yet to the very end of the press conference. Then you hear him talk about, his tight end back in high school and his dad. And I did this newspaper that one time, and meeting John Gruden, texting Phillip Rivers, all these players that he's worked with. The reporter that covered him at Dayton, he remembers.
Yeah.
And then to talk to each of the media members and say, oh, Stephen, that's a great question. Alex, I really like your ideas or whatever, always repeating their name and taking the time to, take each question very seriously. And he just seems to really enjoy these quality moments, these really small moments with everyone. So, we'll get into the football stuff, but just as a person already, like you said, going from Lynn to Staley, like the Chargers are in good hands in terms of the character department.
Yeah, I think he's a great guy, and obviously he has a lot of patience. He went through everyone's questions kind of respectfully and all that. If I was a coach, I would not be able to answer the 10th question about John Carroll University personally, but that moment with Shelly Smith was really cool. And he keeps mentioning the players that have made him, like Khalil Mack and Von Miller. I thought that was just, he keeps talking about, you learn from the players more than they learn from you. And I think that that's a really great scheme fit for what the Chargers kind of have with a lot of talented guys that Brandon Staley will have to learn how to use. And I'm sure he'll use them quite well.
Yeah, in terms of the football ability, everything that we heard from other people is that he has the kind of football mind to be able to scheme around his players. And, I think there was a lot of skepticism nationally about, the Chargers hiring a defensive minded head coach because they have Justin Herbert. And, he said it. I do consider myself an offensive minded head coach. I consider myself first and foremost, an offensive forward thinking type of person. And I think, the way that he talked about his plans for Justin Herbert, I think that was my main football takeaway outside of him being a stellar person. But, he said that he doesn't want to impose a system on Justin Herbert. He wants to be able to take Justin Herbert, build around his strengths, build around what he does well, and then push him to, areas where he hasn't been. And, he mentioned the fact that he can't wait to share his defensive knowledge with Justin and be able to give him that dual education, which really, like, that was my biggest knock about Justin Herbert, was his just mental ability to process reads on the field. And now he's going to have a defensive minded head coach / offensive minded head coach who can say, like, listen, Justin, like, if I were defending you, this is what I would do. And these are the things that I would do. And disguise coverages this way. And Justin is going to be a much better mental quarterback because of having Brandon Staley as his head coach.
Yeah, and I think, Brandon Staley kind of kept hammering home, Justin Herbert, right, didn't have really much of a training camp last year. It was obviously pandemic, and most of it was on Zoom calls. And what you can remember from them, didn't get any reps until he was really thrown into the action in the Tyrod Taylor game. So I thought that, giving him that dual education in a year where hopefully we have a kind of full training camp, I think that that's a really great idea, and it could really take Justin Herbert to that next level. So I'm really excited to see what he can bring from him to him as a quarterback who was trying to read the defense from that mentality.
I think it's wonderful. Anytime you can take a group of players and understand what they're good at and maybe what they're not good at, and just maximize them, put them in the best position to succeed, that's wonderful. I kind of think every coach says that when they first take the job. Like, even Gus Bradley was like, I'm going to take these guys and make them the best ever. And we know that's horse shit. But, but I kind of actually believe this guy, because you watch, Steven pointed out in his great breakdown, all the things that Staley was able to do on defense and just putting these guys, getting Aaron Donald one-on-one matchups. It shouldn't happen. Every team should have 3 guys on Aaron Donald. Yet Staley finds a way to get this guy with one-on-ones.
Yeah.
So I just really like that. And then as far as the offensive plan goes, I came into this conference late, so I don't know if this was already answered, but I think it was John Spanos who answered that or mentioned that no matter what happens, no matter what offensive coordinator they bring in, some will be better than others, sure, but they're always going to have Staley's vision. Whoever comes and goes, it doesn't really matter that much, because it's Staley's offense, kind of, which is really interesting. And I don't know if John Spanos had read some questions about Staley that the media members were having that we had. But he clearly answered it there. Whoever they hire, we still have no idea who the offensive coordinator is going to be, but whoever they bring in, even if he's hired as a head coach in 2-3 years or whatever, it's Staley's vision the whole way. It's going to be, it wasn't tunnel vision. What was the word? Singular. It was
vertical vision.
Vertical vision. Yeah. It's one vision throughout the entire team. And I love that. And I can't wait to see, what that means for this team.
Yeah. And I think go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
If the worst problem this team has in 2 years is that people really want our defensive and offensive coordinators, that's a great problem to have. Because we've been having way more problems in the last couple of years. So I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, I think that's, really well said, because, we look at what happens, with, the 49ers, losing offensive coaches. Well, it's because their offense is really freaking good. So, I think that's spot on, Alex. And, I in terms of the vertical alignment, I think that's an area of growth for the Spanos family and Tom Telesco, because
absolutely,
we look at Ken Wisenhunt was basically forced to stay on the staff when Anthony Lynn was hired, and there is reported some friction was always happening there. And some of the stubbornness was Anthony Lynn's fault, like keeping George Stewart on staff for way too long. But I think having this kind of forward thinking coach who's able to always learn and adapt, and that's kind of what we've seen from him in other places, I think that's going to help out in the staff. And obviously, we've seen some reports about the coaches that are going to come in. Nothing's been confirmed, and he seemed to say today, like, we're still in the process. It's still an ongoing process. They're going to be thorough, and they should be thorough in this kind of process. But it seems like right now the coaching staff and specifically the offensive staff is still up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to interview Kevin O'Connell. Obviously, we know that got shot down by the Rams, which didn't totally understand, because it's like, I mean, it's not a promotion, but it is a promotion because, you know, you're promoting someone who doesn't have offensive play calling duties to someone who does, right? So, you know, but it's technically in their right. So I understand that, but that, you know, we'll see what they do with the offensive coordinators. We haven't really heard any names, and we haven't really heard that Steichen and Pepper necessarily out. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, with the defense, we've heard of Hill from the Broncos, and we've heard of Gannon from the Colts. And Gannon is kind of one of the people who recommended Staley, right, to John Carroll to be the defensive coordinator there, I think. So that's that would be an interesting hire for defensive coordinator.
I didn't expect the John Carroll connection to be so strong with Staley. Like, I get, like, you want to meet with guys who you know, but like, it seems like every guy went to freaking John Carroll and knew something about John Carroll. It's like, oh my God, like, you worked for the Broncos, you know, the Bears, the Rams, like John Carroll. Anyway, you know, as far as the offensive coordinator goes, I think it's kind of silly that that McVay blocked O'Connell from going to the Chargers, because it's very different for an obvious reason than Bieniemy. But you know, the guy's going to always have the issue of not being the guy who calls plays. So at some point, you know, what is he going to do? Is he always going to be blocked? Does he have to just make that jump from guy who doesn't call plays to head coach like Bieniemy's trying to make? So that's kind of rough. As far as, so I don't know who's going to put an offensive coordinator. People have suggested Steichen. At this point, you know, the whole report from Lombardi that, oh, the Chargers are going to force their offensive staff on the, I didn't really say that, but basically it suggested the Chargers are going to force their offensive staff on the new head coach. I don't really buy that. So far, it seems like Staley's been able to bring in his own guys. I know the big question, the big offensive coordinator question, hasn't been answered yet. If he wants Steichen, he wants Steichen. That's fine, I guess. But so far, it just seems like he's bringing in guys who, you can tell by the Twitter responses of other fans, if nothing else, that they're getting a lot of really good guys. That guys, I can't remember which one it is, but one of them was also like an offensive-minded guy who coaches defense. And so it's just really so interesting that he's bringing in these unique talent, these specific guys, and some for positions that we're not used to, or not hearing about, at least with the Anthony Lynn staff, a run game coordinator, a defensive passing game coordinator. We don't know what Tom Arth is going to be, but maybe some sort of like game management, quality control, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
But just so interesting to hear Staley talk about, you know, self-assess. What are you good at? What are you not good at? And, you know, and Staley knows that, you know, he's, you know, better at maybe linebackers and DBs. So you bring in a guy, I can't believe they're getting Jay Rodgers without a promotion, but bring in a guy who's a, you know, a reputable defensive line coach to help, you know, supplement what he really maybe isn't as good at, even though I think, you know, Staley's a good coach overall. So whoever this offensive coordinator brings in, whoever he brings in, I'm actually confident at this point, even if it is Steichen, that he has a really good plan for this offense and for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we saw pretty clearly today that he knows what he wants and he knows what he's looking for. And it's just, you know, refreshing to see someone so young have all these great ideas. I thought it was hilarious when he was like casually, you know, yeah, me and Philip Rivers, we're the same age. And just really kind of
mind-blowing,
shows the transition phase that the Chargers are in for. In terms of assistant coaches, really the only one that is established, like we know for sure is happening. Joe Barry is coming over to coach the linebackers and be the defensive passing game coordinator. Obviously, you have to give him a little bit of a promotion there because that's what he was doing for the Rams. And then Tyler mentioned Jay Rodgers from Chicago. He was considered an internal defensive coordinator candidate for the Bears. So I think, you know, worst case scenario there is that they keep him in the same position at defensive line. He's the one who was also a former quarterback. But, you know, if they want him to be the defensive coordinator, I think that's a natural progression for him. And, you know, Brandon Staley did confirm today that he's going to call plays. So, you know, getting a defensive coordinator is important, but it's not as important, in my opinion, as getting the offensive coordinator position right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive coordinator position will be huge, just because that's the person who is going to be working a lot with Justin Herbert and building this scheme around him, right? We kept talking about, in Buffalo, there's sort of Sean McDermott, who's the defensive-minded head coach there, and then you have Brian Dable, who's the offensive coordinator, who's worked with Allen all these years, right? So I think they kind of want to set that same situation up for Herbert, obviously with the dynamic that Staley will be helping Herbert with whatever he can provide as a former quarterback, right? So there are interesting names, not many that come to mind outside of the ones we already know with Steichen and Pep. At least I haven't seen any others reported other than the rejected O'Connell interview. But I think they want to go with someone who maybe just kind of runs a similar scheme, incorporates some of what the Rams did, obviously with McVay, and just tries to build the best offense around Herbert that they can.
I feel like at this point, we kind of have an understanding of who they're going to hire on defense. So one of the things that he was asked, and one of the things that Staley responded with, is that he might, I don't know if it's just him keeping his options open or not playing his hand, but he talked about bringing in someone who may or may not have already been a head coach or have a lot of experience. I'd imagine if you're bringing in a former head coach kind of guy, it's going to be as your offensive coordinator. So who's on the market right now? I can't even think. I mean, Kubiak just retired, and I know it's not Lynn, so I don't know who would it be.
I mean, Hugh Jackson has been getting some interviews lately. I don't think that there would be any kind of connection there. And then the other one is Jason Garrett.
Yay!
I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, I guess the other idea is like Doug Peterson, but he said he's taking a year off because the Eagles killed him. So I don't think it's going to be him, but you never know. I don't know if they'll strictly go with someone who was a former head coach, but they may go with someone who was a long-time offensive coordinator for that job, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we have no idea what Staley is going to run specifically on offense because, he's a defensive coordinator. Like, we don't know. But I think him wanting to hire or at least interview Kevin O'Connell and, rumored to be hiring his old head coach, is it Tom Arth from Akron? And so, Jason, one of the reporters, Jason Hirschhorn, I think is how you say it. He shared this article that, while Tom Arth does not run specifically the Kyle Shanahan offense, there are a lot of Kyle Shanahan elements in his offense. And obviously, Kevin O'Connell has been running the Shanahan / McVay system in the NFL. So it seems like all signs are pointing towards Staley wanting to get some kind of variation of the Shanahan offense. And, Shane Steichen, he has some roots in that as well. And they dabbled in that kind of system this year with a little bit of the outside zone runs and the RPOs and things like that. But it was like minor dabbling. Like, we went 4 or 5 games with seeing one bootleg call. So, I think Shane Steichen could still stay on as the offensive coordinator. I would be fine with that, especially if he has, Justin Herbert reportedly loves him. I'm totally on board with Pep Hamilton staying on as the quarterback's coach. But his roots are in power football, like I formation, double tight, like old school football. And so to me, I think Shane Steichen would be the more likely of the two to stick on and be offensive coordinator. But, if Staley is calling plays on defense, then they really need someone on offense that has, a good command of the huddle. And like he said, character and what was the other one? Capacity. Like they need someone on offense that really has like a good presence about them and good leadership. And I don't know if that
sounds like Steichen. Yeah,
that doesn't sound like Shane Steichen to me. So I don't know. We'll see. That's a good fallback plan. Steichen has been linked to other jobs as well, and so has Pep Hamilton. But Staley didn't commit to keeping any of them. So we'll see. I think we're going to get a clean house, and that's evidenced by James Campen being let go as well. So I think we're going to be getting a new offensive coordinator for the Chargers.
Yeah, I think the Campen thing that happened a couple days ago, him not coming back, when he's kind of one of those premier offensive line coaches, if they're not bringing him back after one season, why would you bring Steichen back after one or Pep back after one? The only explanation I can see is they want some continuity with Herbert, but
Yeah.
I honestly think there are just other ways to make Herbert happy than just like keep the same guys
Yeah.
around, right? And if you wanted to continue Herbert's success, then in a way you should have kept Lynn, right? So, but that's obviously not what they want to do, right? They want to change the offense, right? So it's not just about keeping the same guys, right? It's just about developing, right? You don't need to keep the same guys for someone to be good.
Okay, first of all, having an Arth Smith, no, Tom Arth, an Arthur Smith, and a Frank Smith all be connected to the Chargers this offseason has been ridiculous. I can't remember anybody's names. Also, Justin Herbert is so good that his former head coach got fired, and then his quarterbacks coach and his offensive coordinator are all going to be able to get jobs or potentially look for jobs somewhere.
Yeah.
As an offensive coordinator. I can't believe all three guys are jockeying for like the same jobs.
Yeah.
Look, I don't believe in Shane Steichen based on what I saw last year. I think the three of us did. I think weeks 1 through, I don't know, 6 or whatever, 7, whatever the Jags game was, we're like, okay, a little bit of a progress here. That looks nice. Okay, doing some different things. But ever since the Miami game, it's just all downhill from there. So, can he grow? Sure. Can he do better with a better vision, from the head coach? Sure. Can he do better with a better offensive line? Sure. Can he do better with the full offseason? Yeah. So while I don't really buy into him, I could see why they would make that work. I just don't know. I just don't know. I really don't know. Whatever Lynn wanted, I didn't even think he could execute Lynn's basic vision of a running offense. I just didn't even think that was up to par. So why could he execute something that's supposed to be analytics driven, cutting edge, intelligent? I don't know. Prove me wrong, I guess.
Yeah, that's the other thing, in terms of offense, he talked about analytics quite a bit, and he said that he wants to grow that analytics department for the Chargers. Daniel Popper pointed out that he watches some MIT summit about analytics, and he feels like I don't really know much about that, man, but I'm all about analytics having a bigger role. It didn't really seem like that was. I think they hired one person under Anthony Lynn that was analytics driven. So I think most of the better offenses in the league right now at least have a full staffed analytics department, and that really affects game time decisions. So we're talking about innovation, and I think that's another thing that Staley's going to bring to the table.
Yeah, the MIT Sports Loan Conference is like a thing for nerds, which means I watch it sometimes. So the superstar of that whole thing is Sam Hinkie, who does it every year, the former GM of the Sixers, who did the whole process thing. But so it's a lot of like the people in sports who are kind of analytical or go about things different ways. But I think analytics is good. You don't want to overuse analytics where, we've seen coaches overuse analytics and let it make their decisions for them. I don't think you want to go that far, but using player information and player data, based on, situational football, like I think that's super important. And it's kind of not embarrassing, but I guess a bit of a fault of the previous coaching administration that it wasn't used, I guess.
I can't even write an article without using analytics, and these guys are trying to play football and coach football without any analytics. It's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, the previous regime not having much to do with that. It's just so archaic and so backwards thinking. So to have a guy who's got this plan, this vision, analytics driven, that's pretty cool. I'm excited.
It is pretty cool. And, there's going to be a lot of changes for this team going forward. And, Staley, I didn't know this, but Staley was also a special teams coach in a previous stop somewhere along the road.
He was.
So, I'm really excited about this, and let's shift towards the defensive thing. So I'm so excited. Like I did that film breakdown, and I cannot wait to see what he's going to do with Joey Bosa. There was this graphic that came out the other day of like pass rush production, and versus double teams. And, Joey Bosa was like the second most double teamed edge rusher in the league. And that's because Gus Bradley never blitzed. He only would bring 4. He would stick Joey Bosa on the right side of the defense and say, go get the quarterback. And you watch anyone who watches the Rams defense from last year, you'll see immediately that Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, even Morgan Fox, like they're all moving around the field constantly. And there's always a strong emphasis of, getting one-on-one matchups. And that's so crucial for pass rush production. And that's the thing. Like, it's going to be so different to watch Joey Bosa move around and rush the passer from the inside and rush the passer from the left, on the right, and do all these different kinds of things. And so I'm just really excited to see what he can do overall with defense, but specifically, I think Joey Bosa, like, realistically could have 15, 16 sacks next year and be the defensive player of the year, because Brandon Staley is going to move him around all over the place. He's not going to let Joey Bosa be the second most double teamed pass rusher in the league again. And so I think for me, that's something that Chargers fans should be, extra excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think with his basic defensive philosophy, a lot of people made a big deal about, 3-4 versus 4-3, what does that mean? But I don't think it's really a big deal. I think it's clear that he's going to run 3-4, but it's not going to be base 3-4, and he's going to be doing a lot of these different things. The names he kept saying in his press conference were Bosa, Murray, and James, right? I mean, those are the three guys that I think he views at all three levels of the defense to basically be like, all right, we are going to put the best around you there to make you succeed, right? Because he realizes, those are really the three quarterbacks, I guess, of each level. So I think that's just what they're going to do. I'm curious to see what he does specifically with Murray, because they can kind of rotate between him with outside and inside linebacker. So we'll see if that happens. We obviously want to see Kenneth Murray in more pass rush situations. And then, he also mentioned Nasir Adderley a lot. So if you have Nasir Adderley kind of playing deep safety as opposed to kind of what he was doing last year, where it just seemed like he was kind of disorganized in the Lynn Bradley scheme, I'm happy to see if we can, finally unlock Adderley.
I'll believe it when I see it. But, he's got some good potential DB coaches coming to be his defensive coordinator. So, who knows? We can talk about those in a little bit. I can't wait to see what he does with Derwin James. I know it's just like, that's the easiest, dumbest thing I could say, but
yeah,
even Derwin James on Twitter, like, oh man, I want to get to work. Like, I want to go do something right now. And I just can't. Bradley had the pieces. When this draft was over and free agency was over, Bradley had the pieces to make this incredible, innovative, transformative defense. And, I feel bad for him that he never really got the chance to do that. Would I think he would anyway if they were all healthy? I don't know. But, Staley's the guy. And, I was concerned about the whole 3-4-4-3 thing too. And everyone pulls that Joey Bosa quote, like, oh, I don't want to play in the 3-4. But then you watch the film and Steven did a great breakdown. Staley will line up a guy on the sideline if that means getting to the quarterback is easier. Like, he doesn't care.
Right.
He's going to make it work for whatever. And if you watch, down for down, I even just watched like the Cardinals game, for example, the last game of the season. I butchered a tweet on this, so I deleted it all. But I tried to take a screenshot of every third down play. And every time the defense was different. And just so that, and with the chess pieces that they have, if they're healthy, and I hope they're healthy, they should maybe be healthy. It's going to be something different. And so we're in for a treat.
We are. And, the 3-4 thing, like, I think that would be a much bigger discussion, 10 years ago when people were not playing nickel cornerbacks. They were not playing dime package all that often. And, this has become such a passing league now. And, if you, I try to do this sometimes, but, if you go through and watch Rams tape, and if they have 60 defensive plays, they're probably in their base 3-4 set, like 6 or 7 plays. Like, it honestly is almost purely nickel and dime packages. And some of that was personnel, because the strength of the Rams team was clearly the secondary, clearly the safeties, and they would try to get all of them out there as much as possible. But, I think they will get at least one like typical outside linebacker type, whether that's Uchenna Nwosu or maybe Leonard Floyd, via free agency or someone in the draft. I think they'll have at least, one or two typical 3-4 outside linebacker types. But, Brandon Staley is not going to put Joey Bosa in a 3-4 base set if Joey Bosa doesn't want to be in the base 3-4 set. Like, he said that as much. He mentioned the word collaboration about 17 times today. So, these players are going to be involved. But Brandon Staley, really, his whole thing about defense is mixing up fronts, mixing up coverages, and like he said several times, like putting players what they're most comfortable with, and how he uses Derwin James versus Jalen Ramsey is going to be really freaking exciting. But I think the 3-4 versus 4-3 was kind of just, an overreaction by people who haven't watched the film.
Yeah, I'm curious to see just what he does with all these guys, as we keep saying, and maybe how that changes free agent priorities, draft priorities. Obviously, we're not going to know specifics about that for a long time.
Yeah.
But I want to see the players that he wants to acquire, the players that he feels maybe don't fit the scheme. Obviously, this team will have a decision to make on Melvin Ingram, one way or the other. But
Yep.
it's feeling like the more we hear about it, and the more that you think that outside linebacker will have to play coverage sometimes, it just doesn't feel like that's what Melvin Ingram really does. So, we'll see what kind of decisions they make, and I'm sure they'll all be based on kind of a scheme that really fits itself together.
All right, guys. Any other thoughts from Brandon Staley's press conference before we get to Philip Rivers' retirement?
I just like the idea that he says he's going to put some stress on the offense, not just a guy who's going to, let the defense figure it out, have a plan, pre-snap, and then figure it out. Hopefully it works. And he's going to put stress on the offense. So I really like that.
Yeah, I liked him as a person. I certainly liked him as a hire, and the way to go with kind of defense and offense at the same time. At the same time, I hope to hear capacity and resources and all these coaching buzzwords a little bit less. It was a bit much for 2 hours, but I think he's a good coach, and maybe we can spice up the questions that reporters ask to not ask the same three things every time. But it was what it is.
Hey man, like I we all three of us have written about the Chargers, and obviously we do the podcast, so like I get it, but some of these questions I just felt like they were asking the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And
you could ask about his dead mother.
Oh yeah.
I was like, gosh. I was like, Pomper, Jesus Christ, dude. That's a tough one. All right.
That was a tough one. And there was that one guy, I can't remember his name, but he asked a question about the combine, and you couldn't even tell what he was saying. But anyways, so I'm really excited about Brandon Staley, man. I think that, the past few years, the Chargers just like schematically have been so simple, and like, sure, there are obviously some advantages to that in terms of teaching younger players, but the X's and O's of this team are going to be so much more complex, and it's going to be such an improvement. And I just can't wait to see what happens. And, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks. We've been getting really excited about these little hires, like Rick Smith being the run game coordinator. And so I can't wait to see what he actually does do at his two coordinator spots. And, the special teams coordinator spot is going to be huge hiring as well. So we'll definitely keep you guys posted there. All right, let's shift gears to Philip Rivers, man. And I think yesterday it was fun and also sad to like reminisce on Philip Rivers' time with the Chargers, and I loved his thing in his statement when he was like, shoot, I was right about the referees. Like, it was a classic Phil moment. And I love the fact that he gave his retirement statement to a local reporter down in San Diego. And it just really shows who Philip Rivers was. I wish him nothing but the best. I know he's going to be a fantastic high school coach. And I'm going to miss him. It's not going to be the same kind of thing watching the NFL without Philip Rivers, and grateful to be a fan of a team that had him at the quarterback for 16 seasons.
Yeah, the thing that I really liked about this season, what we saw from Philip Rivers, is just that he got to kind of go out on top, right? Last year, it was sort of like, he threw 20 picks, and a lot of us were like, is this guy toast? But, he got to work with Marcus Brady, and he got to work with the Colts, and, a lot of the people he was familiar with, like Nick Sirianni and Frank Reich, obviously. So it was just nice to see him, obviously even win the Super Bowl, but it was nice to see him have a really good year where he brought the Colts to the playoffs. That was just super fun to see. But yeah, I'm gonna miss Phil. I kind of got most of my emotions out last year when he left the Chargers, but just not being able to hear another mic'd up of him trash talking, the other team and screaming 90-yard touchdown and Yannick Ngakwe's ear. All those kind of moments, I will miss those. But I'm sure he'll bring some of that same intensity to coaching high school football. So I'm excited to see how that goes. But yeah, no, for a lot of people, like Philip Rivers was the quarterbacks, since they were, kids. And that was the case for a lot of us, so it's just kind of heartbreaking to see him go. But the thing I was encouraged about is I feel like there were actually fewer Hall of Fame debates this time. It seemed like everyone just kind of agreed that he was a Hall of Famer now.
Yeah.
Even though he, there was a lot of that. The only person I really saw against it was Skip Bayless, and no one gives a shit what that idiot says. No, it was just nice to see him going out on top. Now he gets to spend time with his 9 kids. He gets to settle down and finally start a family. Yeah, no, it was just fun to see him kind of go out on top, as I said. And yeah, I'll miss him in the league, but I think it was time to go. He could have played another year, but I think he just knew, there was nothing, I guess, more to accomplish, I guess.
That Philip Rivers press release was so Philip Rivers with the dadgummits and the whatevers, and the way you could just hear him talking. The fact that like even like the spacing was off sometimes, like it was like a messy, like he was like drunk and like typed it out, and it's just so. But it was so Philip Rivers, just like kind of rough around the edges, but you get it.
Yeah.
As far as the Hall of Fame debate goes, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I think it's going to be tough if Breeze and maybe even Roethlisberger retire this offseason at the same time as him. I think that'll make it pretty tough.
Yeah.
But he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for sure. Non-biased opinion there. So, congratulations to the most fertile, horny Catholic, non-swearing shit talker, sidearm throwing, like baby giraffe duck waddling, tough as nails but heart of gold, quarterback that I've ever seen. There's nobody like him. We all had somebody growing up. For many of us, it was, like Kobe Bryant, for example. But, for those of us who are short and couldn't play basketball, well, we were at least short and played football. And I admired Philip Rivers quite a bit. I didn't start liking the game because of him, but I certainly fell in love with it because of him. I'd let him give my eulogy at my funeral. You just love the guy so much. You want to hear him speak. At the end of the day, I think Philip Rivers sums himself up best in his post-game press conference from 2013 against the Broncos, where he just says he just really likes to play football. And that's what Philip Rivers was. I loved watching him play football. He was incredible. So, happy trails to you, Philip. Thank you for watching, of course. He's a Hall of Famer in my book. So love you, 17.
Yeah, thanks for following us on Twitter and liking the tweet and all that good stuff. No, I went to my first Chargers game during Drew Brees' last year, and so that season was obviously kind of a mess. But then they transitioned to Philip Rivers like the next season, and like very similar to Tyler, like that's really what made me fall in love with the Chargers, is just watching this fiery quarterback just march up and down the field and play with all these emotions, and then you learn that he's never cussed in his life. And, LT was on NFL Network and they were like, no, really, like he's cussed before, right? And he's like, no, like we've all tried to get him to cuss and he never has cussed in his entire life. And like, it's just so funny to me that someone, who's played quarterback in the NFL for 17 years has never cussed in his entire life. Because like, I mean, you grew up playing high school football and obviously things have changed now, but the F word was like a constant thing from all of my football coaches, and like cussing was like a part of football, and so it just kind of adds to who he is as a player. And the mic'd ups were legendary, and Tyler said the same thing. Like 2018 for me was like the most fun season of Chargers football that I've watched from afar, obviously, and it just kind of ended on that high note. Baltimore gets that first down, and clearly in year 15 he's just not super athletic, and then the double, and then he points for the first down, and oh man, the Keenan Allen sound effect, I love it. But man, Philip Rivers, he's just someone that I'll always love and respect, and I love the way that he played the game. And sure, he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but the numbers are the numbers, man. And when you're passing Dan Marino and all those guys, I think that makes you a Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
Yeah. And there are a lot of quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls that I don't like. Tom Brady is an unlikable idiot. So I'll take Philip Rivers still over Tom Brady to my grave any day. My first Chargers game that I got to go to was like 4 years ago, and I saw the Chargers play the Giants. And, I'll just kind of have those memories of him being, of course, 4-0 against Eli, which is fun. Yes. And, that was the game where it was like, oh, the Chargers kind of going to get it started. And then, he had a nice fourth quarter comeback win there, dime to Hunter Henry in the back of the end zone. So there are just, cool moments. Everyone probably has their first Chargers game moment, and a lot of it, for a lot of us, it's going to be Philip Rivers was our first, Chargers game, because he never missed a game. And that Iron Man streak will live in history.
What an Iron Man. I mean, even this season, we saw maybe twice where Justin Herbert might have not have gotten up off the field, especially like his first game. He goes down. I'm like, oh, we're gonna watch Easton Stick go in. Or was it the Carolina game? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We take for granted that Rivers just did that every single time. Rib injection after rib injection, or back, herniated disc or whatever was wrong with him, and he just kept playing. He was there for every game that I was at. I mostly started just watching. My dad and I would just go to Raiders Chargers games, so it was fun to watch him just cut up the Raiders every single time, and we would win every single time. That was pretty nice. I liked all that. Rivers was a guy. So I was at StubHub one time, when they called it StubHub, and when they were first had the team there in 2017, and it's awesome. You get to sit there and you lean over the fence. I don't know if you guys have been. But you're right there with the players. Like it's like you could hop it. And wherever we were sitting, we were right behind the field goal post, and everyone was over. All the fans are somewhere else, and all the players were somewhere else. And we couldn't get over there. We had to stay like in our section. And some Melvin Ingram and Denzel Perryman, Joey Bosa, all these guys are doing autographs. I'm like, oh, this kind of sucks. And this random ass dude in a ball cap walks up. I'm like, oh, it's Philip Rivers, and and he's right there. And I'm not really usually short for words. I just handed him my cap, and he signed it, and he handed it back to me, and I didn't say a word. I was damn awestruck and starstruck by this guy. But just I don't know. It's just so cool to see this guy who you admire so much. He's a freaking superstar who just shows up in his t-shirt, ball cap.
Yeah.
He's just kind of hanging out with everybody. And I don't know, just the guy is something special for sure. I love Justin Herbert. I don't love him. I like Justin Herbert a lot. But there's nobody off the field quite like Philip Rivers.
There really isn't. And, I'm sure we'll get there with Justin, and once Justin opens up a little bit more, but, Philip Rivers just such an infectious personality on and off the field. And I loved JJ Watt's tweet about it yesterday when he was like, yeah, I'll never forget lining up against Philip Rivers. And he called out my linebacker for lining up in the wrong way and blitzing in the wrong gap. Philip Rivers just, everybody talks about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and their command of the game and command of the huddle. But, Philip Rivers does the same things. And I think, the stories of him driving up from San Diego to Los Angeles in his little bus, watching film the entire time, and those are the kinds of things that I think make Philip Rivers a Hall of Famer. It's obviously the stats help, and I wish he would have gotten a Super Bowl, but it's just the embodiment of playing the quarterback position the right way, playing through a torn ACL, playing through the herniated discs, like Tyler mentioned. And I don't think there will ever be another football player or person like Philip Rivers, that we'll have the privilege to see, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to believe it kind of went so fast. I guess just now from when you were young and now he's retired, right? So that's kind of the hard thing about it. But no, I mean, the way that I'll always kind of remember him is that last press conference he had after the Kansas City game, where it's he didn't care whether it was 4th and 18, and it might be an interception, but he was going to try to do his best to win. He, by no means was he the cleanest quarterback or had the most precise, T-Rex throwing motion, but he always tried his best, always gave it 100%, and that's how I'll remember him.
I love also how much he just loves he mentioned it too. The best part was being a teammate and being with his teammates. His line has sucked for the longest time.
So bad.
And there's a post-game press conference where he's tearing up because he's so proud of his lineman I think it was Chris Hairston actually, for going out there and battling for him because someone else was injured that day. So he had to fill in, and his guy just going out there his line has sucked. And he's still sitting at the podium, so thankful for them trying so hard for him, even though they were terrible. Sorry, Chris. It's just really, I don't know. I guess that's you see a little bit of like Philip Rivers and Brandon Staley in that way, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's a funny comparison. There are people pointing out that Brandon kind of looks like him, I guess. But Staley, to me, you shared that video of his face on Jack Nicholson's body, and when his face popped up today, I just couldn't unsee like the Jack Nicholson comparison. All right, guys, any other thoughts on Philip Rivers or Brandon Staley today?
No, not really. I mean, I'm excited for Brandon Staley, and I'm interested to see who these hires are going to be and what he does, with the front office and free agency and the draft and stuff, and guys that can play with his scheme. But for Phil, we love you, 17.
Yep. I'm excited for the guys of the past, and I'm excited for the future. Two very different directions. It just feels like the era has split in Chargers football here, where you have this entire, not just Philip Rivers, and not just Rivers versus Herbert, but like maybe more old school, maybe kind of just like the Spanos way, all this stuff. I feel like the Chargers are just starting to leave all that in the dust. Mobile quarterback, innovative offense, giving the coach the control over his staff. So it really is a huge departure, I think, and I'm really excited to see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really does feel like they are really turning a page in Chargers football, and I can't wait to watch it. So if you're watching this video on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons and comment something if you have something specific that stood out to you today about Brandon Staley. But most importantly, hit that subscribe button and that really does help us out. All right, guys, thank you for your time today. Thanks for Brandon Staley doing a 2-hour press conference, man. With just a lot of good stuff from there. But we'll keep you all posted on the coaching hirings and stuff like that. And we will see you next time.
Fuck you, Josh McDaniels.